Got to have the nutmeg. Hey, we are back. Welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. We've got a semi-full house today. I am your host, John Townsend. We're going to be talking all things, whatever we do on the YouTube channel, 18th century and all that kind of good stuff. We are kind of working through this time vortex. We're here in the 18th century. Ryan is behind the bar.
Hello.
Although he's not serving me anything today.
Not today.
I got to have my own barley water, is what we're drinking today. And on the other side of the time vortex, on the console is Aaron. There he is.
Hey everyone, I missed you.
Yeah, there he is. Thank you, Aaron, for coming in today.
No problem.
To help us out with the live stream, because we can do it with two people. I can even do it with one person if I really have to, but it's so much easier when we've got help.
Ryan behind the bar again.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I was slinging beverages today. I really do.
Yeah, you're all out back there. Mm-hmm. Something happened with the supplies while he was gone.
I've really been back here for weeks. Just lying on the floor back here.
Before we get too far, I wanted to touch base on the Nutmeg Tavern mug, which we've had some in the past. Different designs. People really enjoy these guys. They're available on our website. This one is the slimline version. I think they're 14 ounces right to the top. This one's just all nice black color with the Nutmeg Tavern design on the front. And they are available on our website. There's a small quantity left. I told the Patreon folks about these guys and they snapped them up. So if you want a Nutmeg Tavern mug right now, this is your chance. We'll get more in the future, but the supply is taking a long time these days because, well, you know, everything's taking a long time these days. So if you're interested in a Nutmeg Tavern mug, check out the link if Aaron can find it.
Yeah, it's just the handmade Nutmeg Tavern mug.
Do you remember how many pieces were left?
Only like 35 last time I heard, so.
Careful
get it now.
Careful about leaning on your lapel.
Me?
Ryan, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you're making noises.
Man.
Okay, so there's that. I wanted to get that before I forgot it.
And that is in chat too.
Yeah, there you go. It's in chat. And we've got just the amazing quantity of folks that help us out. Amazing help on Patreon. These folks just sign up to pay a little bit each month to help support what we do on the channel. I've got so many names to talk about this week that I'm going to break it up and just get some off right away. Nick Warren, Megan Miraz, Dowell Bowman, I think it's, JFW5377, Philip Merker, somebody that's just Charles, and Colleen Werner. We're going to stop there. I'll get more. Stop there. Kind of wrote through somebody's name. Sorry about that. And we'll talk about those folks later on in the show. Whew. It's been a day. We've been busy. We've already shot a couple of different cooking episodes, and they were fantastic. Really enjoy them. What was this week's? This week's was... Tell me.
Chicken wings?
Chicken wings.
Chicken wings.
Whew. Okay, you guys tell me. I mean, we ate the chicken wings. We know they were really good.
Oh yeah.
I enjoyed making that video. YouTube's not that happy with it. I don't know what's going on with YouTube.
But everyone who saw it loved it.
There you go. There we
Every
go.
single person.
Good. This week's topic is kind of why did I find it? I don't even know. It's one of those I'm working on. It's early days in research on this particular one, kind of in depth. But what I wanted to talk about was the kind of news items that people, not rich people, not even middle class people, but the lower working class folks, the kind of news they would get in the 18th century and how it traveled, what it was like, especially not mouth-to-mouth news, but printed kind of news, and even the fact that they had that kind of thing. So we can guess, sometimes we can think about the 18th century and say, oh, they were all, even you know, regular working class people, they couldn't read or write. Well, that isn't necessarily true. and there were a lot of printed things available for that class of people, and they had just enough money, if it was priced just right, that they could purchase it. Now, these things showed up in a couple of different forms. Now, I've got here, in the case here, a newspaper from the 18th century. You can see this one was, I think, 4 pages. Something like this kind of news is going to be for people of a little bit better means. It's going to be more expensive than something that a day laborer is going to be able to afford. But what was there that was underneath this level of news? Well, they had 2 different things that they would sort of run into, and one of them is a broadside. So imagine a newspaper, but it's just a single sheet of paper printed on one side, that's all. And there were a lot of different kinds of broadsides that you would have in the time period. Some of them were newsy, some of them were entertainment, so they would put ballads on there and sell a song or different kinds of story. They tended to sell for an inexpensive one might sell for a penny, which is basically just what someone that's a working class person could afford. And then there were some that were fancier, nicer printing, almost a little piece of art kind of, and they would be more expensive, maybe a shilling or something like that. So a good bit more money, maybe even 2 shillings. That's a broadside, so that's 1 sheet of paper, printed on one side, maybe folded up. And then they'd have, this is just printed out version, because I don't have any in stock, right, or I don't have any in my collection yet, but a chapbook. Actually, I've got something like a chapbook, but I couldn't find it in time for the show. But it's a smaller little booklet. It might have 6-8 pages, maybe 16 pages. And so this one's, got multiple little pages to it. But it's probably almost that same sheet of paper. Basically, you print all those little panels and then you fold it up and cut it and boom, it's a booklet, right? And these, many times, it seems like the majority of the ones that I've seen are songs. 3 songs, 4 songs in a bunch. I would read you some of these songs, but sometimes they're a little lower in their content, but they had lots of these little booklets, songs, sometimes little tracts or like moralizing stories, some different kind of news, but longer lasting news, right? I thought let's look at a few of these slides that I've got for you. So this is the booklet, the cover of one of these little chapbooks, The True-Hearted Maiden, and look at that, it includes 5 songs. Again, all the ones that I've got here are printed in Scotland. It's got a nice little picture on the front. It's easy to sell stuff with a picture. They almost always had a picture on the front, but not on the interior, because those little blocks are expensive and they seem to be kind of generic at times. This one's 1802. Go ahead to the next one. So I picked a couple of topics that I thought were interesting, and this is a bill. This is 1820 or so. Again, the price down there at the bottom, 1 penny, and it's the account of the execution of W. Burke, and he got in trouble for body snatching, or something similar to that. There was a number of pieces that we're talking about. We talked about resurrectionists in the past. So this guy was a resurrectionist. He got in trouble for what he was doing. I'm not sure. I'll have to read deeper into his story about what he did to. Resurrectionists were always running the balance, or running right on the line of what's legal and what's not legal. You steal stuff from the grave, you just stepped over the line. You just get the body, well, that's, maybe that's okay. Go ahead. A new way of raising the wind. This is the account of the rather curious circumstances which took place, and on anatomy and a party of sailors from a merchant vessel that touched here on her voyage from America. Let me see if I've got more of that one. Maybe that's not one that I have more of. Oh, yes, there's a lot more to the front of that, but again, one of those kind of, let's tell a story or give you a piece of news about some fun occurrence. Go ahead, Aaron. Yeah. Now this one's more historical. It's printed in 1802, but it's about the life of this colonel in 1745. And there are some of these that will tell you about, the Battle of Troy. They're trying to give you some deeper history. So it's like history lesson for those, those bumpkins that can't pay enough for a real, a college lecture, right? So go ahead. So there seem to be several of these. There are folks that now this is printed in Scotland. In the 18th century, a lot of people are emigrating from Scotland to North America, and whether or not they were bound servants or something like an indentured servant, or they paid their way there, those conditions were crowded. They were not nice. And this is a story about these passengers. I mean, it says here 100 passengers died before their arrival. They're talking about how bad their trip was and how barbarous the treatment was by the captain and the crew to these people that were emigrating from Scotland to North America. Go ahead. 3 songs, and again, it's like 2 generic, cuts on the front. I don't know, a jockey at the fair, that guy's not a jockey, and neither one of those are stories about birds. So, but it's like, quick, put a picture on the front. Go ahead, Aaron. Here we go. I've got that one in a bigger form. I can read for you here. Captain Gordon's Welcome Home, a song in praise of his taking of French privateers. So this may have, one of the many times the English are at war with the French, and privateers is sort of like being a private man of war. You'd make war upon the enemy's commerce and take their commerce and capture it and then sell it for your own profit. Now brave Captain Gordon's come and brought more prizes with him home. Let's drink a cup full to the brim. A health to Captain Gordon, because wherever he appears, he clears our coasts of privateers, makes merchant ships trade without fears throughout the northern ocean. And there's a whole giant song about that. So you could show your gratitude to Captain Gordon by going through the streets and singing a song about him, or maybe when you're at the pub that evening. Go to the next slide, I think. Yeah, the last speech and dying words of John Stuart. And John Stuart got in trouble for piracy, and they hanged him for piracy. And here he's saying in this story, this is early 1725, about how he was on board one of the ships that was taken captive, and they forced him to be a pirate. They said, we'll kill you, or we'll maroon you, basically kill you, unless you throw in with us. And he said, hey, I only did this piracy because they forced me to do it. Didn't do him any good in court, and this is his sort of, hey, he wants to, he knows he can't get himself freed, but he wants to tell the true story about what happened to him. Go ahead, Aaron. The following account of horrid murder committed by pirates on the coast of Ireland and how they threw the crew overboard. And yes, Peter Tartu, master of a French vessel belonging to Nantes, being last winter in the harbor of Cork, took on board 4 passengers for France, but they were no sooner at sea, but the said passengers killed the said master and all the crew, and carried the vessel into Dartmouth, where they painted it a new color. And then there you go. Stories about piracy. That was one of those topics that came up when we were in the Patreon live stream and somebody wanted to know more about piracy. And the interesting caveat, which I would love to see the research on that was on this particular piece, was that Irish youths, undoubtedly male youths of that time period, the 18th century, had a lot of piracy in their background, or piratical actions. And it was said that up to 87% of Irish youths were involved in some sort of piratical action in their early life. Wow. So it isn't any wonder that off the coast of Ireland, these guys, they took the ship. Such a great topic. I can't wait to dig in more and find those gems that are hiding in there. Actually, they're all really, really interesting.
Somebody asked if people were actually forced into piracy.
Well, I mean, this particular person who I mean, if your ship is taken and the pirates give you a choice, that is, I mean, it's like, well, I'm going to kill you, or you're going to be part of our crew. And you know, if a ship is trying to take over another ship, it's quite often that if the resistance is great, that the pirate crew suffers as well, and so they're immediately undermanned by fighting the ship in the first place, and then they have to crew a whole nother ship unless they abandon one ship and just all go into another one, which sometimes would happen because they wouldn't have enough crew to man both ships well enough to survive. And so kind of taking over some of the crew that you would of the vessel that you took over, well, that would definitely happen.
Wow.
But they were still, I mean, culpable for that decision.
I'm not getting a ton of questions on the topic.
No, that's
There are a
fine.
few.
That's fine.
One person asked if newspapers had paid reporters that actually went out looking for news.
Wow, that's a good question that I do not have an answer to at all. It seems like most of what's coming in, I mean, a lot of the newspapers, we might complain today about, well, not that we really have newspapers anymore. If you still have a newspaper, or maybe a decade ago when you did, you probably complained that newspapers were full of advertisements. And when you read these 18th century newspapers, they are seemingly the same kind of 50% advertisement that, I mean, they're not fancy ones. They don't have pictures or anything, but they are full of things basically like half classified ad. Whether or not they're, stores talking about what they're selling, or people advertising personally, I lost this, or I'm looking for, that kind of thing. A lot of things that were stolen from them show up, or runaway servants. So both of those things kind of fill up newspapers. The rest of the stories, I'm not sure if they really needed reporters so much as the news kind of came to them.
Somebody asked if pirate ships had a command structure like military ships in the time period.
I am not an expert on piracy.
Yeah.
But what I have read, they were a lot more democratic in what was going on. There was still obviously the guy in charge, but pirate crews definitely had this sort of who gets to choose, what they're going to do next. And since they were very, lawless individuals, they wouldn't necessarily put up with the same sort of, oh, the captain is, he can do whatever he wants. So that's research yet to be, easy to come up with, I guess, would be the word for that.
I'm going to grab some super chat.
Okay, yeah.
So Dominica Sasanka sent in a super chat, and so did David Parker. Neither one of them said anything.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mandatory Carry says, oh, cool news. Very timely subject. I prefer your food subjects, but let's be honest, news is never a bad subject. And hashtag keep fighting.
Okay.
Yeah, that was full. Tony Smith, your opinion on the glory of romance of the golden age of piracy?
Yeah, well, we certainly romanticize all that piracy that was going on, and yeah, I don't think there's anything romantic about it. I mean, they were ruthless, stinky, mean guys, and murderous and all that to go along with it. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that we romanticize it, I think that's obviously, coming from things like Treasure Islands. I don't think there was nearly the romance to that until that sort of time period when, you're far enough away from that sort of piracy that you can, that it looks different, 100 years, 200, 150 years later, hey, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought it was in the time period. I don't think anybody had a problem with how they dealt with pirates.
People are wondering if there were actually newspapers or if it was more like the broadsheets that were happening.
Well, I mean, yeah, the St. James piece that I've got here, the St. James Chronicle, is a newspaper. I mean, it wasn't a big, 100-page newspaper with all these sections in it, but it certainly was, much larger paper and, multiple pages with different kinds of content in it. I think the kind of what goes on with a broadsheet is that it's a single piece of paper and it has a single topic on it. So a newspaper is going to have these sort of different sections to it. These are stories about what's going on, these are advertisements, these are classifieds. So there's definitely a different feel to a newspaper than there is a broadside.
Excuse me. And then some folks are asking, why just on one side? Why not print it both sides?
Yeah, cheap. Yeah, they wanted to make it less expensive, and not only is the paper expensive, but just the printing was just so much more difficult. I mean, today you're on one of those magic computer boxes that you guys have, and you press a button, and I hear that things just pop out the other side. It's not anything like that in the 18th century. I mean, you imagine that setting all this type, and if you have any kind of image, you have to have a woodblock print that's in that place. So it's just so much more expensive and time-consuming to turn out even a single page of printed text.
Patricia DeAngelis sent in a super chat, said this week's Nutmeg Money from the UK.
Thank you.
Max Cool says, if you could do any job aboard a ship for one day in the 18th century, what do you think it would be? That's a great question.
Yeah. Wow, all that sounds interesting. When I think about it, it's like all of a sudden, it's like, what would the job you want to be doing? Ugh, wow, I don't know. None of them were all that much fun. It's like, boy, being on board ship and watching all those guys do that work would be great.
Right. Just observer, please.
Yeah.
That's my job. Thank you.
I mean, can you imagine climbing up the Ratlins and going up and working with the sails way up there? I mean, undoubtedly it would be, Vertigo City right away, and getting used to that. And it's very dangerous, and the canvas is heavy, and maybe it's wet, maybe it's frozen. It's dangerous work. And then you've got the people that are, you could be the gunner. You could go down into the powder magazine in the dark with a candle lantern and load gunpowder into bags. There's some fun. I don't know. I'm having a hard time coming up with the job.
But they all sound so great.
Yeah.
Vault Boy says that my family came from Germany in 1749 to PA, around present-day Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
They were on the ship HMS Phoenix.
Right.
Arrived in Philly. There were Rangers in Western PA as well. Any info on the ship or Rangers?
Well, no, I don't specifically have any, but it sounds like, knowing even the the name of the ship and everything you should be able to, kind of cross-reference that and get some more information about that. Knowing that much is really amazing. Of course, in the time period, there are different sorts of ranger military groups that are working in the frontier. I don't have any specific information on that, but that whole area, Pittsburgh, 1750, that's, even getting, now you remember there's Braddock's defeat. He's trying to take over, like that's 1755. He's trying to go and capture Pittsburgh from the French. So there is a massive quantity of history right there packed into the 1750s and really important stuff.
So Vault Boy also sent another donation right after that just to say, also, you're awesome. Keep this up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Christine Pearson, were printing presses common?
No, they weren't necessarily common, and especially here in North America, there were sort of restrictions. There were different, these different places along the colonies. We think of the United States as a sort of a homogeneous whole today. Those 13 colonies were very, very different, especially before the Revolution. And some places there was a lot of control on the news, and the people in power did not let just any old thing be printed. You're going to find a lot of control, or just plain don't print stuff in places like Virginia. Even the Quakers in Pennsylvania, certain kinds of books aren't being printed because they really needed to be approved before they could be printed. And there was a lot of political things going on, even in that 18th century time period. So you get to the Revolution, where you have different factions and the newspapers that are based around them. But I don't think there's a ton of sort of printing presses and printing things going on. I think it's a lot more exclusive than we would imagine today.
Speed and Style Tony sent in a super chat that says, here's my money for the day's news. By the way, loved the new recipe video. We'll make it this week.
Oh yeah, you will enjoy it.
Lumpy Thumb says, speaking of sailing, could you remind us of the use of the sauerkraut on ship? Shout out to the Colonial Posters Nutmeg.
Yeah, sauerkraut shows up in several different places. I think Cook even talks about sauerkraut, and it had, depending on how it was manufactured, it would have vitamin C. As long as you don't cook it, right? It's like, if you just, sauerkraut is such weird, interesting, fun, stuff to make. Slice that cabbage up, salt it, chuck it underwater, basically, and boom, you have sauerkraut. And it brings a lot of vitamin C with it, and they were using it against scurvy. They didn't know. They thought maybe what was really going on was the acid. Well, in one sense, ascorbic acid, yes. But in another sense, they thought it was just acid. Any old thing acid is gonna be good for scurvy, which isn't necessarily true. But it shows up sometimes. The sailors might complain, but they didn't have a whole lot of choice, did they?
So, hello, 1212 says, they sent in a super chat. Big fan of you guys. Just ordered 3 trade knives for me and my buddies. They all love them. Such a great buy. Thanks for all you do.
Excellent. I'm so glad you got them and you're enjoying them. I love it.
Soda City Works, sends in a super chat. I do a lot of screen printing and such, teaching others on my channel. I am also interested in the actual making of the fabric of the linen that were worn in the past. I hope that one day you show how.
Ooh, excellent topic.
Yeah,
and
fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've got about a half a video put together, but there's a lot to it. You'll find some on YouTube, but we have been, I don't know, have we talked to Timothy the Weaver lately? No, we talked to him last.
Not since all this stuff has been going on.
All this stuff is going on.
It's hard to make plans right now.
It is. It's very hard to make plans. We've got someone in mind that has a wonderful both persona and the knowledge on the topic, and we're going to try to do a video on that if we possibly can. Somebody
commented and they asked if you ever thought about opening a shop in the UK. There are a lot of reenactors over there.
No, I haven't. It's hard enough to do what we do. And there are people, there's, talk about even opening up a different store on the East Coast or up in Canada and, other places. And it's difficult. It's difficult. And we are, really busy with what we try to do. And so.
Super chat from Becky Sue's Place. Can you talk about font? I noticed modern S's and F's on the same broadsheet.
Yeah. We have one of the earliest Q&As we did, probably 3 years ago, was on the S and F thing going on. And it's funny because people bring that up because I don't even notice it anymore, except occasionally when you run into a section, you're like, okay, now what is that? Oh yeah, that's an S, because they put it in a strange place. But those Fs aren't Fs, they're long S's, because they actually are shaped differently than an F if you look carefully. Although I think sometimes, they may put in an F because they didn't have the proper long S in that particular typeface or font. There are some, they all seem to be kind of very similar. One of the most similar ones that we have is Caslon, right? That's one of the typefaces that we have today, which is based on an early, like an 18th century kind of typeface. And they all had, usually the shift is happening somewhere around 1800. Depends on obviously how new the printer, how new the type was that the printer had, but there seemed to be that those long S's kind of run out of favor by the time you get into the early 19th century. There are rules for when that S or that long S shows up versus the short S. It's usually not at the beginning, and it's always in the middle. But if there's one, then it's this way, and if there are two, it's always that way. And I wish I had all the rules for you. And I can't imagine trying to keep track of that. It's like, oh, I'm printing, and make sure to put the long S in there, not the,
Can you talk a little bit of, actually, before we go there, let's do a little bit more Patreon names.
Sure.
We should probably do
Patreon,
that.
yes. Before, whew, boy. So the next batch of Patreon names: Will Coker, Marianne Hadley, Leslie, Richard Kimberly, Rocketman 314, Kadar, Traluff, John and Sarah Talley, and Daniel Sheeler. I think that's the one. Gosh, there's so many names. What am I gonna do? Anyway, that's the second batch. Thank you, Patreon supporters. And again, if you're a Patreon supporter, make sure to check on the Patreon website during the week. I've been trying to do more Patreon live streams, so make sure to check into that.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about the wood stamps that you were referencing a little while ago? If you had a picture, you need to carve a wood stamp?
Yeah, so either wood, or sometimes they would have different technologies for printing that, but there's a lot of woodcuts, especially the ones that we saw there. Here's, the one that's on the front of these. They're very crude and probably fairly quick to manufacture. And they were a block of wood, and you would get in there and carve away the negative space and make these, and they would be a certain depth so that they could fit exactly the same depth as the typeface, so that they'd set all that together and squeeze it up tight, and then use that to print against, rub the ink on it, and off it goes. There are some that you can still find that they different collectors that have the original ones, and boy, I really want one, but they're kind of pricey. But some really, I love the feel of them and the art of them, and the primitiveness of the art. I just enjoy them.
Somebody put in the super chat right now, Amber Crystal Daughter. Which bit of Townsend's cookery is most recommended for a sourdough starter?
There's the bread series, and I would go way back. There's a playlist for the bread series. It's probably season 3. I can't remember exactly.
It's 2 or 3.
2.
Yeah.
Right, 2. Okay.
Yep.
That's a while ago.
It was our first series in the kitchen.
There you go. So the bread series has a section where we talk about yeasts and where they come from, and what they thought about sourdough. Now, since then, of course, as with all research, 10 years later, you've got more under your belt about that. And they were certainly doing sourdoughy kind of things, but and even sometimes in a industrial kind of setting. The bakers on the continent, France and all those places, are much more likely to use a sourdough kind of a bread versus the bakers in England, which were always using a sort of fresh yeast from the brewer for baking their bread. And there were even complaints. It's like, oh, their bread is all, sour tasting. Oh, or this bread is all yeasty tasting, right? But there was certainly a quantity of sourdough kinds of things going on. Now, if you want something super simple and still just tremendously interesting, what was the one we did earlier this year? What was it called? Bacteria bread.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Bacteria bread
Hand
episode.
leavening.
There we go.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is such an interesting way of doing bread. And so you just never know what you're going to get, really. I I love the wild experiment that it is. I would check out that episode.
Sue O'Connor sent in a super chat, says green beans pickling, thanks for the crock.
Oh yeah, making all those pickling things, and pickling was such a popular thing in the 18th century. We just talked about sauerkraut. It's a great thing, and yeah, those crocks, they're great for that.
Snugglebug Parissa sent in a super chat that says, watching and enjoying your videos all the way from Sweden. Do you have a favorite fun fact or part of history that you like to share with people? Thank you.
Wow. Do I do that, Ryan?
All of it. all the time.
Ryan's like, if he would just shut up,
No, I don't think that you've got a particular thing that you keep coming back to.
On the topic, I wish I had her name. A viewer and fan over in Sweden has recently done some. Did you check that out? I sent you that email on those Swedish recipes.
Yes.
From 1755, there's a kind of a famous Swedish cookbook, and she translated some of those, just 3 or 4 or half a dozen of them, and I love that. I can't wait to do some of those recipes. Excited about that.
Yeah, that was really cool. We had somebody do that for us once before.
Yeah, right.
And we ended up doing a couple videos.
Right,
off of it.
the
It was
mint
neat.
bread one, and I can't remember which one of the other one was.
Yeah. Amber Crystal Doter. I'm gonna go with that. Oh, I already read that.
You made him do all that work
that
twice.
tricked me.
Oh, you got your money's worth
Oh,
there.
well, I knew that there was another one. There it is. Man. What crockery is best for a sourdough starter? Jar, jug, pot, bowl, bottle. She had to send in a second super chat because I misread. And that makes me feel terrible. But also, thank you for the super chat.
Thank you. Sometimes those sourdoughs the vessel was the sourdough. In fact, if we look at salt leavening, salt risen bread, which I'm not sure that you really should, it's even about sort of the room. It's like, well, you don't want this to raise. You want to put it over there. That's the bread room. It's got all the special bread magic, which of course now we know. Yeast and bacteria are hanging out in that room. But a lot of times the bowl is the important part. You make bread, and then you don't clean out the bowl all that well, or maybe you can't. So they would have these giant, something like if a baker, he'd have these giant wooden troughs that he would make his dough in, and he might let it set there, a day, and then you'd scrape out that stuff, bake his bread, and then go again. And what was left is starter for the next batch. So the bowl itself can be an important part of sort of keeping the thing going. But today, I think most people use glass or a ceramic. I don't know. I think you'd want to stay away from anything metallic, because that may both bring in metallic flavors, because your sourdough can get acidic, and then it would attack the metals and bring that in, or you want to go with ceramic or glass so that you can sterilize it completely and start with something that you know doesn't have anything weird in it, which of course is just the opposite of my bacteria bread, which is, hey, bring it all in, let's see what it makes.
One thing about that is we thought it would be too gross for YouTube, but we discussed the idea of having 3 different people make some bread to see whose hands had the most gross stuff.
You mean the best?
Right, yeah, right.
Yeah, here we are in coronavirus land where everybody's washing their hands 24/7 and, you know, putting alcohol on them, and that's just the opposite.
Yeah. All right, Mike Howell sending a super chat. Happy Friday, Townsends. Making white pot this weekend using chocolate chips instead of fruit.
Oh.
Thanks for all you do, and have a great weekend. I think he's on to something.
I think he's on to something.
Martian Lemon sends in a super chat. Can you talk about whale oil in the 18th century?
Yeah, so, you know, whale oil is probably a bit more common as we get into the 19th century and becomes more of a thing. But such a huge industry. Before, you know, oil's getting brought up out of the ground, oil was still being used for lighting and things like that. Okay, some of it's coming up out of the ground, just sort of seeping up. But the vast majority of that oil is coming out of from whale oil, and they would go and capture whales and cut them all up and render them down into whale oil, or the spermaceti, which makes this amazing candle. From the typical 18th century and 19th century. So yeah, and the lamps kind of have to have a special design, and sometimes, like today, we'll try to burn kerosene in a lamp from the time period. It's like, well, it doesn't work right. Well, it wasn't made for kerosene, it was made for whale oil.
Somebody in the chat just said, why do you only address super chat questions? It's not something that we're doing on purpose, but they just keep coming in.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's only so much time that we have. We should probably go to 2-hour live streams. What do you think, Tua?
Yeah. Cajun Prepper sends in a super chat, says the Ranger Roast coffee was the best coffee ever. I was thinking about trying some tea. Which one should I try?
I like them all, but the gunpowder is kind of fun because of its shape and how it's all done. But that's tough. Oolong? I don't know.
Sir Frederick sends in a super chat. Enjoying the tavern with my beer and nutmeg added. Is there a good place that has 18th century newspapers? It would be nifty to come to an event and read the news.
Do you know if DeLee or some of those folks print
I'm not sure.
newspaper-y kind of things? Yeah, so like this one's a period one. You can find like them on eBay if you dig around and see what you can find. They're not that horribly expensive. I mean, just for a random, newspaper. There are some sites online where you can find scans of newspapers. They can be very hard to read and hard to find exactly what you're looking for. So I'm not sure. I mean, either maybe you can find some reproductions, but I'm not sure who's selling those. I'm not sure how you would sell it. It's like, hey, I've got a reprint of a random newspaper, but there might be some with specific events. The day that some particular story came out, and they would.
Another idea is you might be able to get something like that from somebody that is doing a press demonstration at an event.
Yes,
that's likely.
Right.
So,
good idea.
Someone sent in a super chat. They're called Someone.
Oh,
hi from Vienna. Love the channel.
Hello from Vienna.
Another person in the chat had the idea that maybe the chicken wings didn't do so well because there was no nutmeg.
I should have put nutmeg in it.
In the chat, somebody says, was hot sauce a common thing in the 18th century?
Hot sauce, no, but they were using peppers, and there's the occasional reference in some of the cookbooks to something like cayenne. I think a lot of that is happening a bit more in the individual kitchen. So, and they did have certain kinds of things like hot sauces or mushroom ketchup or kind of pre-prepared sauces.
Another one from the chat: how was paper made for printing and writing in the 18th century?
Well, a lot like paper is today, and there was a lot of paper recycling. We've got an episode on zero waste paper. Check that out. That's in the one we did this summer, right?
Yeah,
With
the writing
Brian-
series
with Brian Allison.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
So we've got a whole episode on that.
Were there any rules about spelling in the 18th century? In the 16th and 17th centuries, things seem to have been spelled phonetically.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who's doing the writing. A lot of personal writing. It is make it up as you go along. And that's my kind of spelling, let me tell you. Hey, that looks about right. You know, I think somebody would understand. And you'll find different spellings, like multiple spellings of the same word in a single letter, where you just kind of change the spelling. And sometimes that really helps you understand how they said things, because they're kind of spelling phonetically. So you can get some pronunciation ideas at the same time. But there was a move toward standardization of spelling going from that 18th century time period and really getting strong into the early 19th century.
Somebody asked in the chat, tavern pipe question. Where did folks spit the old ends of their pipes?
They may have tossed them into the fire. You know, there was I think there was a sidewalk or some walk that was down in Williamsburg, and it was just all pipe stems, just thousands and thousands of crushed up broken pipe stems, and they used it as sort of like paving. So I don't know.
Rosemary Morgan asked, "What are your thoughts on honey water?"
Sounds good. You leave it for very long, and you have mead. It's sort of like all these other things that are going on in brewing, whether it's perry, cider, mead. Those things are sort of naturally occurring. The honey by itself, boy, that'll stay for a long time. You water it down, and it's going to start doing things.
And mead is one of your drinks of choice, right? Isn't it one that you like more than others?
It can be.
Yeah. Okay, there was a good answer. It can be.
It depends on the meat, doesn't it?
D.A. Risse sends in the super chat. Was there any such thing as an illegal drug in the 1700s? Any such as opium frowned upon?
Socially frowned upon, undoubtedly, but no, there wasn't sort of legal issues around that, and that really doesn't even occur to any great extent, I think, until the 1920s or something, when that's it's like, okay, we're going to start making laws about this stuff.
Somebody says, "What's the?" I think that was for somebody else in chat. I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes it's hard to tell who you're talking to. Sorry. Go to Patreon.
Let me go to Patreon real quick here. Lisa Nobles Gaines, super thank you. Faster Lola. There's Tessa Wright, Brad Yeager. Rob Poole, Linda Hipple, Rick Wallace. Now, I think these guys on this, these are people that have upped their amount just recently, so thank you. Rick Wallace, Elizabeth Gildersleeve, Peter Muka, Richard Kimberly, Danielle Binham, and we do have some folks that just kind of want to do a one-time shot. It's like, I don't want to sign up on Patreon. I just want to help you out a little bit. And there's a PayPal link. And John Bradley, Alexander Jansen, and Christopher Solars, thank you for that kind of support. So it is truly amazing how all you folks help us out in that way, and it is a help both monetarily and, hey, it's a morale booster just knowing, hey, there are people out there, they want to help me do it, not in a way that's like, here's $2, here's whatever. Thank you so much.
Daniel B. Engel says, "Is there going to be a Dan Woolwack appearance again?"
I don't know. We'll have to talk to Dan about that.
I would love that.
Dan was such a cool guy to work with. We really enjoyed him.
He knew how to do videos.
Yeah.
He was great.
So I don't know if any of these mugs are left, but I'll talk about them just one more time. The Nutmeg Tavern mug, the one thing I forgot to mention, I signed most of them. So if you want a signed Nutmeg Tavern mug, you better hurry.
He spelled his name phonetically.
Wowak?
No, you on the bottom of the other cup.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if you could call that spelling.
Link is in chat for anyone interested.
All right. A lot of people are happy with the masks. They want you to know that.
Oh yeah, but I don't know. I mentioned it in the live stream. What, 2 weeks ago?
Something like that. Yeah.
Are there any more?
I don't know.
We can't keep up.
We
You got-
cannot keep up
Can I get
making
one?
cloth masks for people. So we have like black ones and green ones, and ones with floral patterns or check patterns, and so we tasked the seamstresses to say, you got to help these people out. I want you to make masks. So that's what they did.
So Dwayne just asked how ink was made for printing. Dwayne, in that writing series, there's a playlist called Writing Series. A lot of people, your questions are answered in that as far as ink, writing, paper, post, all that stuff. It's
Right.
a really cool playlist.
Printer's ink, that's probably a bit different.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, it's got to be, since you're not writing it from a pen, but it's got to be more like almost like a grease or a paste. And so I am not familiar with what printer's ink was like in the 18th century. Probably it's just a massively fascinating topic I'd love to know more about.
Somebody's asking about the popularity of syrup versus sugar, like maple syrup.
Yeah, well, that's going to be definitely location-based. Maple syrup is one of those North American kind of things, and you really don't, that's not happening in England or in other places where they don't have the right kind of trees or environment, the kind of temperature fluctuations that makes it easy. That's one of those things that both settlers and Native Americans were processing gallons and gallons of maple syrup to sell into the market here in North America. And there's also something that's similar, which is sort of molasses, which was taxed in a different way than sugar and was used as a basis, like you would use sugar or maple syrup to make spirits or different kinds of table beer. So there's a bunch of really great topics in there.
Somebody's asking if alcohol was regulated.
Taxed, maybe, yeah. And that is a method of regulation, isn't it? So, but I don't know that it's dealt with. Well, there were issues with, say, in England in the 1720s through the maybe all the way up into the 40s, they had a gin problem, and the gin was coming in, being made very, very inexpensively, and there was a lot of abuse of gin in that time period. And so they tried to regulate it by who could sell it. So there were people that were just selling small amounts on the street. So there'd just be people all over, and hey, you want some gin? Boop. And they, put a stop to that sort of thing. And it really was a whole societal problem right there in England during that early 18th century time period. So they regulated it.
Do you know if people were making syrup from reducing cider in the time period? Cider syrup?
I can't answer that. I don't think so, because I mean, you squeeze the apples down, and sort of the way to deal with that would be to instantly turn it into cider, or you let it turn into cider and then you turn it into apple brandy or something like that, right? You're converting those sugars to something else. I don't know about reducing it into a syrup.
2 questions about our store. Do we sell more in the store than we do online or in the catalog? And when will the Nicholas Cresswell Journal be back?
Oh gosh, we keep trying this. We can't get enough of those Nicholas Cresswells going, but yes, some are in the hopper, but they're probably a good 10 days out right now. Everything's slowing down. It feels like the entire world's slowing to a stop, but we're gonna get more Nicholas Cresswells. So I'll try to make sure to get more in. We'll talk to Sonia about that. And the store, do we have more in the store? No. Basically, it's the physical store is now just sort of a showcase for the very occasional person that comes here. And of course, in this day and age, nobody's going anywhere. So, but no, the physical store, it doesn't have more than what you see.
Josh and Sarah Talley sent in a super chat.
There we are.
They
They're
didn't
on
say
here.
anything.
Hey, real quick.
Okay.
I think we may have missed a super chat.
Did we?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
think 10 drafts deep.
10 drafts deep.
It's in between amber and Cajun pepper.
Okay.
He was wondering if we get to his question.
Sorry about that.
It's kind of a cool question.
Go ahead and read it, Aaron. You've got it.
What's the worst thing you've cooked and eaten? Start with you, John.
For an episode?
I'm assuming that's what he means. Yeah.
Sometimes I think they're going to be horrible, like the stockfish, and turned out fine. The one that I'd probably go to is the, and I'm not sure that we did it wrong, which was those little pickled fish. What were those?
Oh,
Smelt?
pickled smelt.
Smelt. I don't know. I think the ratio was off there or something. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just not that picky of an eater, which I used to be, just super picky eater. I don't know. Asparagus. What can I say? It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say, Ryan?
I don't have an answer for that.
Ryan likes everything.
I pretty much like everything. I'm not a big fan of. I'm going to stick with
We've got one that we're working on that might just be the most disgusting thing ever.
I'm afraid of this one. I really am.
Yeah. If Ryan's scared, I can't wait to try it.
I missed another super chat that just popped in here. David Lee sent in a super chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Aaron, what about you? Disgusting food.
To be honest, none of them have been really disgusting. I think there's two ways of looking at it. What's the most I don't know. We've had a few that just turned out super bland and boring.
That can be.
That's almost worse because the disgusting ones are kind of fun.
Yeah, right. And it's like. Oh.
I was afraid of coffee eggs, but that was really good.
Coffee eggs was okay. Never mind. That was my least favorite.
Oh, you didn't like that one?
No, those. Were
they were like edible and interesting, and maybe they would, maybe you'd get used to it after a while.
I mean, if it's all I had, yeah. But oof.
It was that slow motion shot you got of them.
Jiggle.
That was.
Yeah.
There's a request for somebody on the modern side of the time vortex to post a link to portable soup.
Link to portable soup.
Link to portable soup. Okay.
He'll do his best.
Super chat just came in. This is probably gonna be the last one. We gotta get going. It's from Talia Valencia. Yeah. I just discovered your channel the other day. It's been so informative and interesting. Happy to subscribe and support. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Both, the manner in which you do it and what you've done. Thank you.
You cannot sign off yet.
I'm not signing
Orlando
off.
Tackett II just got recipe books and journals from the store. Love you guys. Here's some more money for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Orlando. The chat. That link to portable soup is in the chat there.
There we go. Everybody needs soup you can put in your pocket, right? Well, it's called pocket soup in the 18th century, so I can get that in case you needed to take soup along with you. Did we do it?
We're good to go. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
So we got another cooking episode coming up on Monday. What is it? I've already forgotten.
Fried cream.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fried cream. This was weird.
I've got to watch the draft
video
of that one. Yeah.
It's
it might
one
be
of
the
those,
final.
It's one of those recipes
I
with
did color
lots of
correction
steps, but it's really yummy.
Yeah. And today's the pieces we did today.
Oh.
Yeah, Aaron said it was one of his top 10s.
Yeah.
Top 10, but it seems like every other one that's top 10.
Well, I'll say this: one of them was top 10, and the other one I didn't even try.
Oh, you would have liked it. It was good.
Nope.
It's hard to convince some people to. Well, anyway, I'm not even gonna go there.
Yuck.
It has been a wonderful time. I am so glad you got to come into the Nutmeg Tavern today and join us for this episode. We always have fun in the tavern, whether it's just me all by myself or I've got these wonderful guys helping me out. Thank you guys. And thank you guys for being in the chat, for watching the videos, commenting on them, sharing them. That'll teach YouTube. You'll share those videos and people will have to watch them. And all those super chat people who support us financially, as well as the amazing supporters on Patreon. Thank you guys for everything you do. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for watching.